The clock is ticking for Attorney General Merrick Garland to turn over materials related to Joe Biden's classified documents case. And if he doesn't do it by noon Eastern today, he could be held in contempt. Florida Congressman Michael Waltz joins me now. Congressman, great to see you here. Do you think Garland will comply? And if not, will House Republicans actually follow through on that contempt threat?
I don't think Garland will comply, unfortunately. I do think that President Biden absolutely should have been charged in this case. According to Special Prosecutor Herr's report, he repeatedly and openly admitted that he had classified documents in his basement, that he had boxes of them in his transcript to his ghostwriter and in conversations with his ghostwriter. And that's what the committee is asking for. Look, at the end of the day, I've got to remind everybody, President Trump was covered under the Presidential Records Act. Biden took these documents as a senator and vice president. He was not covered, and he should be charged. But he's sitting now as president, which means you've got to provide those documents as part of an impeachment inquiry. But at the end of the day, I think this Department of Justice has shown there's two tiers of justice. They will protect this White House no matter what, even at the credibility of our justice system, which has completely tanked with the American people, sadly.
In response to the letter, a DOJ spokesperson saying the following, quote, "The department has been extraordinarily transparent with Congress. The Attorney General released Mr. Herr's report to Congress and made no redactions or changes. We hope they will reconsider this unnecessary escalation." But you touched on the key things that House Republicans are seeking. One, the audio from Joe Biden's interview with Special Counsel Herr. But more importantly, I would argue, is the audio and the transcript from Herr's interview with that ghostwriter. Detail for us just how important that ghostwriter is for getting to the bottom of all this.
Well, this ghostwriter spent hours and hours with President Biden, and those conversations detail two key things. One, Biden repeatedly admitting that he had classified documents, so that is willful intent, that he read from his notebooks from his time as vice president and senator that had classified material in it. And then thirdly, it outlines, I guess, the addled mental nature of Biden, where he couldn't remember key dates, he couldn't remember all kinds of things that Herr then used as justification to not prosecute him. I mean, you just can't have it both ways. Either he is fit to be president, and if he is, then he's fit to be prosecuted, or if he's not fit to be prosecuted, how the hell could he be president for another 5 years?
Switching gears, the House will be handing Mayorkas' impeachment articles to the Senate this week, launching a trial as early as Thursday. Schumer's office saying the senators will be sworn in as jurors in the impeachment trial this coming Thursday, the 11th. Senate could dismiss the charges. They could go through with the charges. What do you think ultimately Chuck Schumer does?
I think he finds some way to refer it to committee, to bury it, to make it not happen. He does have to swear the senators in as jurors, but he'll find some type of parliamentary trick. But here's where I think he's going to regret that. The FBI director is ringing the alarm bells. Chris Wray is telling us repeatedly, openly and behind closed doors, that one of these 300 people on the terrorist watch list there is going to be some type of attack. He is ringing the alarm bells. He is saying he's never seen this kind of threat in his FBI career. And with our wide open border, when you have dozens of people on the terrorist watch list coming across, I'll remind everyone that San Bernardino, that attack was from the terrorist watch list. Pulse nightclub was from the terrorist watch list. And I think Schumer is going to regret dismissing these charges.
And if anybody should be sensitive to a terror attack, it should be the senior senator from the state of New York. Congressman Michael Waltz, we appreciate your time this morning. Thank you, sir.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.